Hello, my name is Sarah Moore, and today I'm going to be speaking about a poem that I chose for the poetry and podcast assignment. So the poem that I chose was Christmas Bells by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. I hope that I'm saying that right. And I'm not sure if we're supposed to do this, but I suppose I will read the poem aloud. Okay. I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And thought how, as the day had come, the belfries of all Christendom had rolled along the unbroken song of peace on earth, goodwill to men, till ringing, singing on its way, the world revolved from night to day, a voice, a chime, a chant sublime of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then from each black, accursed mouth, the cannon thundered in the south, and with the sound the carols drowned of peace on earth, goodwill to men. It was as if an earthquake rent the hearthstones of a continent, and made forlorn the households born of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. So that is the poem, and now I will be speaking about it. So the reason that I chose this poem was because Christmas is just one of my favorite things, and basically I was looking at all these poems on the website which Mr. Kent had recommended we look at, and I wanted to do a poem that I knew I was going to enjoy, because if I'm going to be doing a whole project on it, I want to kind of be passionate about what I'm writing and talking about. And so I kept trying to think about what I liked, and then all of a sudden I was like, Christmas, because Christmas, it's more than just, the average person. I love Christmas. It's October, and I'm already singing Christmas carols and, doing Christmas things. So that was the reason that I chose it, honestly. And I knew I had heard of the song, because it was later created. It was made into a song, the poem. So that's the reason I chose it. As far as it meeting my expectations, well, like I said, I knew the song already. So I kind of already knew what I was going in for. But I tried to imagine, if I hadn't heard the song before. And, I mean, the title Christmas Bells doesn't really make me think about, this poem's kind of about more dark ideas, if that makes sense. The idea of war and the cannons and things like that. Hearing Christmas bells, you kind of think of something more lighthearted and I don't know, Christmas bells, because Christmas is such a nice, happy thing, so it was actually, if I hadn't heard the song, then, it would have been kind of surprising as far as the title and what it, is actually about. Comment on the title. The title, I mean, it fits, obviously, it is about Christmas bells, so, I mean, it does make sense, but considering, as I said, it's kind of about war and things more deep. I mean, I feel as though Longfellow could have, he could have done more with the title, even with how the song is called, I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. He could have even done something like that, or even Peace on Earth. I mean, my poem that I wrote is called The Snow, so I guess I don't have the right to say anything, but I don't know. That's just my opinion. It obviously fits. I just think he could have done something a bit more, if that makes any sense. So this poem, from at least my interpretation, is about a man, I'm assuming, as Henry is a man, I imagine it to be a man, who hears bells on Christmas Day, and so they kind of fill him with hope, there's a war going on, and he hears these bells, and he thinks, peace on earth, he just feels hope. But then as he's hearing these bells, they're drowned out by the sound of cannons off in the distance, as like I said, there's a war going on. And so then he thinks, oh, well, there is no peace on earth because this war is going on and it's really hard for everyone. I'm assuming it would have been supposed to be the Civil War, as this was written in the 1860s. And so he kind of gives up on the idea of peace on earth. But then in some sort of miraculous event. I'm not sure how to explain it. All of a sudden he hears the bells over the cannons, and then he kind of goes back to the idea that maybe, peace on earth can be a thing, and it goes back to a more hopeful tone. So that's at least what I think it's about. And after researching, I did find that it was the war was kind of dragging on Longfellow. His son had recently been injured in it, so, he was just kind of fed up with the whole thing and was starting to give up on there ever being peace. From whose perspective is the poem told? The poem is told from the, I guess, whoever, it's first person, so it's the speaker. I imagine it to be, when I researched it, I found that it's supposed to be a soldier in war. I imagined it to be an old man. I'm not sure why. That's just when I read it, that's what I thought, but yeah. What literary devices are evident? So there is a simile. It was as if an earthquake rent. That's kind of like good for comparison, things like that. Kind of makes it more realistic, I suppose, if you have something to compare it to. There are metaphors, the cannons for war, the bells for peace. That just kind of, it kind of gives the message, it kind of takes the message to a different level, if that makes any sense, like it's kind of better to understand. There's the repetition of the peace on earth, goodwill to men at the end of every verse or stanza. That phrase is said, which kind of, I feel like it kind of, that relays the whole message, because the message is kind of, there can be peace on earth even if wars are happening. So, yeah. And then there is personification. For hate is strong and mocks the song, because obviously hate cannot mock things. And that also just kind of adds feeling and emotion to the poem. So as far as how it makes me feel, it kind of makes me feel sad, to be honest, because just thinking about the fact that this was written like 150 years ago, around there. And, the idea of war was at that time, like, very prevalent. And even though, obviously, where we live, we're very lucky and we don't really have a war around here. But, I don't know, just the fact that 150 years later, there still is war going on in so many places. But at the same time, he does kind of say that there can't, like, at the end of the poem, it's said that, peace on earth is a thing, basically. So, it can kind of make me feel hopeful, but yeah. What images stand out for you? When I'm reading this poem, this is basically what I think about whenever I hear this poem. So I can I can imagine the Christmas bells ringing and kind of playing some sort of song. I imagine that one that's like ding dong, Christmas bells are ringing. I'm not sure why. And I imagine it to be at like a church or a big tower or something like that. And I imagine like an old man sitting up in a large stone tower, like almost like a, not Brock Monument, almost like a lighthouse, but there isn't a light. I don't know how to explain it, but I just imagine an old man kind of looking out the window just in dismay at the sound of the cannons over the Christmas bells. I'm not sure, again, why that's what I think about, but that's what I do. What structure is evident? So there are 7 stanzas and 5 lines in each one. There are 8 syllables per line. And he uses an AABBC format. The A and C each have 8 syllables, and the B's have 4. It does kind of make it, I feel that the whole rhythm of the poem is kind of song-like, so it makes sense that it was made into a song. It also sounds a little repetitive, to me at least. I don't know, like, that's just a personal thing. But I can kind of feel a Christmassy thing from it, like a Christmas song kind of thing from that, so, it does make sense. As far as whether I like the poem, I do like the poem, but I feel like it's more because I like the song, like just the fact, obviously war is a huge thing in our society, so, it's good to relate that to things like Christmas to kind of get people to think about it, because when people think about people feeling bad in Christmas, no one wants anyone to feel that way, if that makes any sense. But then at the same time, Christmas to me, just thinking about sad things kind of almost takes away from the love I have for it, if that makes sense, which is almost kind of selfish, I suppose, because, this is the harsh reality for so many people, so I shouldn't even think that, but that's just kind of immediately what comes to my mind. But I like the poem, though. It sort of makes me feel things. Maybe it's good for me to feel these things. I'm not sure, but that's just the truth. Okay, what's the next question? What feedback would I offer the poet? I do the repetition. It can work, but I feel that it is a little repetitive when saying it out loud. Again, this is just a personal thing. I'm sure some people really like it. I just personally think it can sound a little repetitive and get kind of awkward to say the last line over and over again, but that's just my opinion. What questions does this poem raise? This I had to think about, but it does kind of make me think like what it would be like to live in a place where war was a very prevalent thing, because once again, I'm lucky, and obviously I don't have that reality, but it does kind of make me think, I wonder what it would be like, It's just something that I never really thought about. And then as far as it answering any questions, again, I really thought about this, and I'm not exactly sure if it answered any questions for me. I mean, maybe it kind of makes me think about what it might have been like to live in 1860s, but I'm not exactly sure. To me, it didn't answer any questions for me, if that makes sense. I don't know, maybe I didn't have the connection that I was supposed to when reading the poem. I'm sure it did answer things for some people, but just for me, it didn't really. And did I recognize the poet? I actually did not. I had never heard of him, but I did do some research, and I found out that he was he was very well known for his contribution to, poetry at the time. He wrote many famous poems, and he actually is like probably one of the top poets, at least of his time. So that was interesting to find, because, I just sort of came upon it by accident. And then my favorite line from the poem. My favorite line is, "I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play." I know that's kind of 2 lines, but that line just really locks in that imagery, as I said, of the bells. And I like that image of the bells ringing, nice Christmas carols. It just reminds me of like my childhood somehow. I'm not sure. The image that it brings to my mind is just really nice, if that makes sense. So, this is the podcast. I'm sorry it went over, but I had a lot to say about the poem, and I kind of wanted to get all my thoughts out there. So, thank you for listening.